Hey everybody, welcome back.
Yes, welcome back.
I'm glad to be back from the break because I don't know what you did during your break, but I listened to jokes from Christopher.
And yeah, that's never a good experience.
So this is now the beginning of my break.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, now you don't have to listen to me tell jokes anymore.
We'll also call it Module 5, where we're going to be talking about web services and OData.
Yes.
And these are gigantic topics. As the whole day, that's been the theme of the whole day. We're going into a module, opening up a gigantic can of worms, giving you just a little bit of a taste. Just
here's one little
worm.
worm.
Half a worm.
Yeah, and that's
There's a lot more in there, but
So,
yep,
absolutely.
I hope you're okay with that.
Yep.
Because that's what you got. Module 5, Services and OData. Let's bust right in. Let's first of all look at an overview. So, we can't give a gigantic, extensive, thorough history of web services. It's a really big topic, but just a little bit of one. What we're talking about here is web services. That is how your software and software in general does not just requests things over the web, but actually runs methods and does things over the web.
Exactly.
And in antiquity, we had solutions that were actually quite heavy, things like remote procedure calling and such, that made it so that it was quite...
Corba.
Oh, yeah. Yuck. Yeah, not today, right?
No.
It's not what it looks like at all, and yet there's so much more web servicing going on.
Yep.
Yeah, so we've come from these really heavyweight, very proprietary, kind of brittle... my service can talk to this service, and that's all. We came from that to now...
And even then, only on the same local network.
And only sometimes, only on like every other Thursday.
Right, yes, depending on the lunar pattern.
Right.
And, yes.
That's the way it did work. Thankfully,
when I was your age...
Thankfully, we're developers in the here and now, and what we get is pretty awesome. So we've kind of come from these heavy ones into, realizing, what, let's just do this over HTTP. A lot of services have started working over HTTP, but sometimes with some pretty heavy packaging around the service itself.
Right.
So still quite a bit of work that needs to get done. And then now we have the concept of REST-based web services. So these are working over HTTP, but in a very much lighter way.
Yep. More
fundamental way where it's using the default HTTP terms as the functions for what it's actually doing in the service.
Exactly. Yep.
And now for our data packages, we've moved from proprietary binary messages to XML and all things XML, and this is good because XML is wonderful, and now we've got something that's even better than XML. It's shorter and very expressive, and that is JSON. So these days, the way it looks is most services are REST-based HTTP services that are translating JSON across the wire. That's the way they work for the most part.
That's it.
And then OData is yet another abstraction on top of these services, one that gives us a really nice standard for moving data around, and we're going to take a glance at that. So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
Now here's a bit of a history using Google Trends to glance at the history of the terms XML API and JSON API, and thanks to Vinay, the guy that authored a post that gave me the idea to include this, and you get to see here visually the relative popularity of XML APIs and JSON APIs. So you can see that JSON coming to fruition here in about 2007 has really been doing a steep climb. And if you're anybody these days, you're making your services using JSON, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're going to see in a couple of minutes here, I mean, the amount of overhead, the amount of just extra weight that XML brings to the table, that is just not necessary. If we can strip all that away, it just makes for a better experience, better performance, and certainly more flexible, especially when we get into, JavaScript, that's the name, JavaScript Object Notation.
Yeah, JavaScript Object Notation. That's perfect. What does REST stand for? I suppose we should probably...
Representational Stateful Transfer. And there's honestly only one reason I remember that, is because that doesn't clear up anything.
Well,
there's that too. There's that too. Yes. But just to clarify, just to make sure, REST is a way of formatting URLs to make our requests and getting certain data back, and then also how we make the request, the verbs that we use indicate what it is that we want to do.
Yeah, it's basically a pattern.
That's it. Yeah, it's an open standard.
Let's take a glance at what it looks like, the same exact message in both XML and JSON. So what we have here is, let me get a little highlighter. What we have here is the XML. This is a person. and we're specifying that person and a couple of properties, first name and last name, and then we're giving him a collection of cars with 2 cars inside there. Okay, this is just the way you do it. And with XML, you have what we end up calling an angle brace tax, right? Where you've got to put those tags in there. Notice that for a relatively short property like Joe, unfortunately, I've got angle, first name, angle, slash first name, angle, just to specify Joe.
That's a lot of repetition.
Yeah, I'm really repeating myself.
Doing the same thing over again.
Yeah. And I'm reiterative.
Yes.
And redundant. So, yeah, it's not ideal. Instead, what is better is to be able to specify in my JSON down here, this is just an object. It has a property called first name, and here's the value. It has a property called last name, and here's the value. And you can see how terse my highlighting skills are weak. You can see how terse the embedded car objects are as well. So
just get right down to it.
Yep, let's get to the point. That's what we're trying to do here. Let's go ahead and discard those changes and jump back in there because my PowerPoint skills are obviously weak as well. And let's talk about a very simple REST-based JSON web service. Now, what I've done is I have stood up a web service that I just called it widget service. Okay, I love
very
widgets.
Creative. Yep,
let's just all things widgets. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go to widgetservice.azurewebsites.net and see what that is. Okay. Now, if I go there in a standard old browser here, azurewebsites.net, it's going to request. It's going to get the standard route. It's going to be taken to the home controller, and it's going to give me this default ASP.NET page. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for what I specified in the API, and specifically the values controller. So I just use the term values in my API area, and bam, I get my JSON back. But the way that Internet Explorer shows me my JSON is by offering for me to download it. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to jump over to an application that's near and dear to my heart and almost always open on my screen. And you know what? Can I just redeem myself a little bit here? The last module we were looking at this call, and I said I didn't understand what had happened. I had requested this and then looked at the response and saw a large binary value. What had happened... This just feels like an apology, really. What had happened is I had gone to Code Show Azure Mobile Net, and I went to the root of the site, and it was returning this image, and that's exactly why. Now, if instead of this, I go to, let me just redo it so you can see. If instead I go to the tables, and then to the name of my table as documented in the API, I cheated, and I went and looked it up when we were on our break, because I don't remember everything from the API off the top of my head. I get what's not a whole lot more interesting, but at least is telling us what's going on, and that is a message in the JSON saying, hey, there was an error, it was a 401, you're not authorized to view this resource, and that makes good sense. Not just anybody can go ping your Azure mobile service, the data in your table, and get back the data. They're going to have to be authorized. So anyway, that's that. Moving right along, let's go back to, in Fiddler, our request for the widget service. Remember, this is in Azure Websites, and I said it was under API, and this was called values, and let's see what we get. Now, when I first do that, look at what's returned to me. Let me look at that in the raw, and what's returned to me, actually, I'm not recognizing this either. What is that? Did I type that in wrong? Let's have a look. Widget service. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump into my request and make a little customization here just to see if this is the problem. Let's execute that. And in fact, it isn't. So I must be getting an error, and I'm not sure exactly why, because I was just there. Right? I went to API, and I went to values. We'll just work on this together, right? We're all in this together. See, that's what I'm expecting. I just don't know why Fiddler's not giving it. I wonder if it's a
is the URL right? Is there a typo in the URL?
Let's look again. Do you see any typos? Widget service.
From here, I can't see
Azure
the screen.
Websites. API. Values. It looks right to me. Well, let's just
go. Do a copy and paste.
Okay. It's a good idea. That's why I have you around.
See?
That's one of the reasons.
Not my jokes.
It's not because of your jokes. Look at that. That was it.
See?
Well, now I have to know where the error was.
I think it was you had a dash in there.
Oh, I did. It was Azure Dash websites. Now
Right.
let me jump over to the chat room and see if somebody corrected me.
It'll be a few minutes.
Oh, it'll be. Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they can't correct me after you already have. That's not even fair. All right. So you saw me kind of cheat here. I went and dropped a little directive into the HTTP header to try to tell it explicitly, hey, I'm interested in JSON coming back. And I didn't actually need that. My service is going to be returning JSON by default. So I'm going to go remove that just to prove that that's not necessary. Fiddler's pretty nice because it tells us with a little icon here, hey, what we got back was JSON. And if I double click on that, it's also pretty nice and it gives me the JSON view of the response and shows it to me in a tree. It doesn't seem to help that much here, but when you've got a gigantic object, it's really nice to see it as a tree.
Absolutely.
Much, much nicer. Now, this is a JSON response, but if I would have gotten an XML response, it would have recognized that and shown that to me in the XML tab. But I can also go choose raw, and I can look at what this HTTP response looks like raw. Let me hit raw on the request as well. Now, everybody just look here for a second. Here's what we're actually sending to the server, and here's what it is actually sending back. So these are both quite, and I know this is a little bit small for you. I'm not sure if I can get that expanded in Fiddler. Do you suppose it's possible?
I think it's possible.
I'll just zoom into them here. So this actual request here, this is all there is to it. That's the text.
Okay.
That's what was sent over the wire.
Very small, very lightweight.
Yeah, and this is the response. This is what was sent over the wire.
Again, very small, very lightweight.
It is. Now, this header looks kind of large compared to this value, but for most values that are coming back, that's a relatively light header. And remember that this is all text, subject to compression, so it's going to be just fine. If this bothers you, stay tuned in while we mention WebSockets a little bit later. But here's what has come back. Remember when we were learning our arrays? JSON notation is really just, it stands for JavaScript object notation, and it's almost identical to object initialization syntax, which is the syntax for creating objects in JavaScript. The only difference really is that whenever you have properties, you have to wrap the property in quotes. And the second difference is you can't specify functions because it doesn't make sense to pass functions around as data
Makes sense.
over the wire. That wouldn't be safe, actually. Okay, so what we've got here is a plain JSON response that just makes us as developers happy. We don't have all kinds of envelopes wrapping it. We don't have all kinds of crazy things going on. That's all that's coming back. So let me see if there was anything else I was going to show you. Let's, I'm going to open up CodeShow and show you how we're going to actually use a web service, actually this exact same web service in CodeShow.
Perfect.
So let's jump over to CodeShow. And I have in here a demo called Web Services. It's right there on the front page. And I have a basic web service, and I have an OData web service. And try that again. Only this time in super slow-mo. You know what? I just did this a couple days ago, and I know I can already see that I'm going to have an issue with that. So let's actually just show that elsewhere. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on, because I was just going to show you the actual implementation using that in an app, and we'll do that later on when we get to the OData section. So maybe you can tell us about how we would consume these things if I was using C# on my client.
Sure. And actually, let me go ahead and fire up Visual Studio here. And I'm going to show both sides here. There we go. And OK. So if we kick over to my copy of C# here, what I want you to notice is I've created just a basic little MVC app. I haven't done anything. I just created this real quickly at lunch. I did add in the entity framework, and I did add in a kind of trimmed down version of the data context that we had before. And I also added in a little initializer just to add in three little trails there. So really nothing here outside of just the stock MVC app and just those couple little customizations for the entity framework that we've already discussed. Well, now what I want to do is I want to create that API controller. So I'm going to say add new folder, and let's say API controllers. It doesn't have to be inside of a folder called API controllers, but I think it works better. And I'm just going to right click and say add, and I'm going to say controller. And then right here, you're going to notice it says, hey, create a web API to controller with actions using entity framework. So let me just go ahead and grab that. Let me hit add. I'll give this a name of Trails Controller. I'm going to point this at my little trail class. I'm going to point this at my little demo context. And I'm going to click add. And then I'm going to pause, take a sip of water.
Me too.
While this thing does everything that it needs to do behind the scenes. And just like that, it generated all the code that's needed to have that be my API controller. There is my HTTP style service for working with Trails. And you'll notice that if I fire up my browser here, give this just a second, and I head on over to API, which is coded in as a default, but you could always go in and change that, /trails, and hit enter. And this is going to take it a couple of moments because it's going to create my little database. And then you're going to notice that down at the very bottom there, I need to make you go away. I guess I will just resize you. There is my little JSON file, and let me just open that up in Notepad, and sure enough, there is all of my data. Well, the question then becomes, well, how are we going to consume this from C#? Well, you're going to notice that out there exists a little converter called JSON.net. And that is a little tool that you can use to actually take JSON, convert that into a .NET object, take .NET, and convert that into a JSON string, which is awesome, and it's cool, and it's slick. And I'm going to demo it in just a couple of seconds, but I've got one small problem. How do I generate the class that's going to be used? Because that's what JSON.net is going to do, is it's going to take my JSON, convert it into an object, take my object, convert it into JSON. If .NET's going to do that, it needs to know what your object looks like. Now, in this simple little example here, I could just go in and create the object on my own. I've got two properties. I've got trail ID and I've got name. But what happens when we've got something more complex? This isn't going to work. So that's where a little helper comes into play, which is going to be JSON to C#. So just JSON to C#, by the way, not www.
Okay.
Just simply JSON to C#.com. And it says, hey, give me your JSON or give me the URL. Well, I've got the JSON, so let me just paste that in, and I'm going to click generate. Now, it'll automatically give me the C# code back. Now, you'll notice that it's calling it root object because it doesn't know what else to call it. That's okay, I could change that name. But let me just copy my code here. Copy, copy, copy. And then let's create a real quick console app here. Console. This is going to be my API client. And let me just come right down here and paste in our little root object, and I'm going to call this trail. Awesome. So now, let me, on the client, add in the NuGet package for JSON.net. Hey, will you look at that? This must be popular. It's right there, number 2. Let me go ahead and hit install.
In fact, it is.
And close that out. And it gives me the little help page, which is fine. I'm going to close that out, and let me just come back over here, API, Trails, and I'm actually going to go ahead and grab trail number 1 here. Let me just do it that way. So let me just close that out, and let me come back over here to Visual Studio. Perfect. So now, let's go ahead and fire up a little web request object, HTTP web request. Request equals HTTP web request. And how about you give me my little helper? You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to do this. And, oh, I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to go using system.net.io. And where is my other one? I want, you know, this is always the problem. We become so reliant on IntelliSense that when it doesn't come up right away, we start to go, There we go. And let me take 2 on this. Web request. All right. See, we're really cooking here on this show. You know, this is all my fault. I was thinking earlier that, hey, you know, everything's gone really smoothly. All of our demos have pretty much just gone off without a hitch. Everything's been just fine. And there is my problem. Let me just grab both of those DLLs and hit OK. And now, using system.net, build, system.net. It's right there. Using. Cool.
I wish I knew.
All right. So what do you say we hit a slide here real quick?
Bam!
Everything was going so flawlessly.
You want to work on it while I show what I...
Yeah.
I need to redeem myself still, and then you can redeem yourself.
Right. This is just going to be the failed demo module. Yes, but there will be redemption. This is going to have a happy ending.
At least we packed it all into
one.
right.
I'm going to let you do it. Yeah.
Okay.
We're just,
okay, great.
You know, getting it out of the way here.
Yeah. So just for context, remember that I was trying to call my service from JavaScript. I had an issue in CodeShow because I just slammed that in a couple days ago, and so I'm just kind of tried to wire it up from scratch here in the meantime. So let's go ahead and have a look at my screen. I was in debugging there. Let me jump out and let me show you. What I did here is I created a Windows 8, actually a Windows 8.1 project. I just did a file new project, and under JavaScript, Windows Store, I just chose a blank app, okay? So it's just the simplest of all simples. And we have an HTML file and a JavaScript file. Those are really the only two that we're concerned with. Our HTML file was dead simple. It's just a paragraph. It says content goes here. When you run this application, it's black and it says content goes here. What I did was I named that paragraph because I'm going to try to pack some stuff into it. And actually, I'll delete the contents as well. So at least I have a placeholder, a place to put some things. And now I'm going to jump back to my JavaScript file. And all I did here was add an onReady method, or an onReady function, which this is going to run as soon as the app is ready. It's analogous to the jQuery's document onReady. So I wired that up, and now this is what I wanted to show you. Okay, this is inside of an application. I'm using the WinJS XHR. Now, this is just one way to do a request manually and programmatically in your code. Actually, perhaps a more preferred, certainly a more robust option is to use the HTTP client that's built in to the WinRT runtime. You can use it the exact same way from C# and C++ and JavaScript, and it has some benefits. But it's just a little bit lighter, and I'm more familiar with using XHR, so that's what I'm going to show right here. So I've got winjs.xhr, and it takes an object, an options object. This is very common in JavaScript. And the only property that's necessary is the URL. Everything else will be defaulted. It'll do what it should, which is do a GET request with the right document mode and everything. So I'm going to choose that the URL is this URL that we were looking at. Widget service, azurewebsites.net, API, values. Now, just to remind you, what this is coming back with is not that. This right here, and in the raw, this is what it's coming back with, okay? So it's going to come back with that. That's what's going to be the value whenever I look inside my result object at my response object. And to make that utterly clear, let's do a debugger. I can actually set breakpoints here as well, but I'm in the habit of writing the word debugger and stopping right there. And let's go ahead and jump into this. Now, this happens as soon as the app is ready, which was very quickly, so we're already broken right here. And so I jump in and I can hover over result and look at it. And if I look, I get some information about that response, including the response itself, that response text. So there you can already see our values 1, 2, 3, and 4 in there. It's all encoded. If I look at it in this visualizer, I get to see that exact JSON value. So I know that that's what I'm dealing with. I know that it's valid JSON. So I'm going to do a JSON.parse on that. That's in JavaScript, how you say I've got a string that actually represents JSON. I want to parse it and turn it into an object. So when I do that with the result.response, I now have what is going to be an array. Wonderful. So I've got an array right here. Now what am I going to do with that array? Well, we learned about loops. I'm going to go ahead and stop my debugging. We learned about loops. Let's go ahead and use loops. Let's say values for each and write a function. And this is the v. I'm just going to use a single letter variable there. He's kind of busy. That was a ribbing, by the way. I'm going to use a single letter variable there. And for each of the values in this array of 4 values, I just want to shove them into my paragraph. Now, I can refer to that paragraph with simply P1 because it has an ID of P1. Not sure if everybody knew that, but I can do P1, inner text, and I'm going to append to the inner text because I don't want to delete what I had before. So I'm going to append to the inner text the value, and it's a string, so that should work as it is, and then a break, just so we can see them on new lines. All right, let's see if that works. I'll hit F5 so that it's debugging, just in case this doesn't work, and you can probably see my problem. The problem is I was a knucklehead, and I added that into the inner text instead of to the inner HTML. Let's set the inner HTML because I am, in fact, setting some HTML. The BR tag here is HTML. Try again. Control-Shift-F5 stops and reruns in debug mode. And there I have that paragraph is actually writing those values out one at a time. And in this case, this is a prime opportunity for me to use my array functions if I want. I could, for instance, before doing a for each on here, I could map these into something else. So I could map the values and specify a function here. I should spell it right. That would just be great. I can map those values. I can reuse that character there. And I'm going to map them by returning dash, space, and then the value, the existing value. So I'm just prepending a dash and a space onto each of those. Close my parentheses. Remember, this is basically a lambda function that we're dealing with here. And when I run this, Control-Shift-F5, I should then get the dash prepended onto those. Okay, so this is a very manual, granted, it's a very manual way of consuming a raw JSON service and doing something with the results. Okay, how are we doing over there?
Now we're good.
Are we ready for redemption?
Now we're good. Yes, now we're ready for redemption.
I feel better too.
So,
it always feels better
yes,
to have some resolution.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, every now and then just something goes completely sideways. And actually what sort of worked out well is I actually kind of got to go back through the chat window. It was sort of interesting after having fixed it, being able to go back in and kind of see all the different suggestions.
I gave you some extra time, so you went ahead and did some other work as well.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
went and had lunch.
Hey, I grabbed a cup of tea. But no, the coming back over to this, what it was I was missing was actually 2 things. Number one is I needed the reference to system.net, which I did go in and add in. And then number 2 is I needed the using statement as well. What threw me for a real loop there, because I had added both of those in, was that the IntelliSense was still not coming together for me. And so I did the typical close, reopen, and voila, it now works. So we'll just kind of roll with that.
Cool.
But I went ahead and I punched out the rest of the code that's needed here. And what you're going to notice is right here is I'm setting up my web request here. Now, somebody mentioned in the chat room that calling the constructor for web request is obsolete, which is true. The way that you want to do it now is by doing create. The catch is that create is from web request, thus the cast. So we just have that right there. Then we can go ahead and get the response by calling get response. And then we can read the entire thing by calling right here our little get response stream and passing that in to a stream reader. Now that's going to give us the full-blown text, and that is what we're going to use. In fact, here, let me do this real quick. Let me just do a console write line and reader read to end, just so we can sort of see this. And let me just comment both of those. When I run this, you're going to notice that sure enough, we get the JSON back. So what I've accomplished here is I've made the little request. That's the URL. Remember again that REST and HTTP APIs are all about formatting URLs. So we formatted our URL. We called create. We then called get response. We grabbed the entire stream. And then if we again read that out to the end, you notice one more time, it's the full-blown JSON. Now I need to convert that. And this is where that JSON convert comes into play. That the JSON convert gives me the ability to both serialize and deserialize our objects. You'll notice I just need to tell it the data type right there and give it the full-blown text. And then you're going to notice that I'm just going to print out using the property from the object that we had below. And now you're going to notice that this will print out Mission Bay. So there's the full-blown how we do this inside of C#. Now, I'm going to throw this back to you, Jeremy, with actually a little thing that was brought up in the chat room, which will eventually bring it back to me as well, isn't there a nice, neat way to go in and just simply create a reference? Or isn't there another way that we could be formatting and querying, formatting URLs and querying data?
Yeah, so you want to transition into the next section?
That's exactly what I want to do.
That was a segue. I gotcha.
Yes.
So you can imagine that when you're creating a web service, whether it's because you're creating your own models and then you're deciding, I want to be able to query these, I want to be able to insert these. Oh, how about update? Maybe we should be able to delete them.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and what if people are perhaps not just querying them and getting all of them, but maybe they're going to filter on them.
That would be really nice.
Maybe they don't in every case need the entire object. They need to kind of project it or map it or select it into another object and really just get a couple of fields from our object. So there are all these extremely common scenarios. Yep. And the bottom line is you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel here.
No.
After all, we're not flying rockets. And
nope.
And even if, my previous career was in aerospace, and sometimes it was rockets. And even then, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Well, because rockets don't have wheels, but that's beside the point. So what we need is a real standard for all of this data. And then if it's a standard, then we can probably get a framework to do a whole bunch of the work for us. And that's exactly what we're going to be getting with OData. So let's take a look at OData here real quick. The whole reason for OData is so that we have a standard. That's the reason, okay? Now let's jump right out to the spec. I'm going to link you right out to odata.org. This is where it's defined. This is a big open standard. It's a collaboration by a lot of entities. And here you'll find all the documentation that you need. You look at the documentation and it sorts it to you by version. Version 4 is extremely new. And exciting. You can look at the kind of the diff documentation and see what it's going to add for you. And there are a number of services that are defined here. And actually, we're going to be looking at this Northwind service. So this Northwind service, whenever I click on it, look at this. IE is trying to serve me a JSON file now. So I go, all right, well, I don't really want to look at that. Actually, I want to go copy that shortcut and figure out what it is that you're pointing at. And let's go over to El trusty Fiddler and paste it in there. What is it that you're giving me here? It is giving me JSON. Let me clear this out just so that it's nice and easy. And let's take a glance at this. So it is giving me JSON. Now I can tell automatically by the structure of this meta document, as well as by the v4 in the metadata, that this is version 4.
Sort of a giveaway.
Yeah. So that makes it easy.
It's good to see Northwind come back.
It is, yeah. Let's give a little love for Northwind. Northwind, if you're not familiar, is a very popular, it's been around for a really long time. It's a fictitious database. So what this really is a database that has been instantiated through OData. Now, when you hit an OData root URL, it gives you a list of all of the entities that are possible. It's kind of like looking at your list of tables in your database. It'll tell you, here are all the tables you have, here are all the entities, and that's what it's doing right here. And it's giving it to me in JSON format, which again is an indication that it's v4, because before that it was giving this to us in Atom format, which is an XML standard. And so if I look at those, I can say, look at this. We've got an entity called categories and customer demographics and customers and employees. All of these tables exist here.
Nice.
One of these is products. So let's have a look at products. And the way to do that is very simple. You just look at, I know this is the root URL, A, because it's got this SVC on the end, and B, because it delivered the metadata to me whenever I hit it.
Right.
And I can append onto there products, and it says, that's cool. That's cool. I'll give you the products. And it gave me the products. And here you can see that the size of this was 4.3K. and it was a JSON document, and let's actually go look at it. Now here's where it's helpful to have this tree, because now I can like collapse these, and I can look through all of these products. I get all of the relationship information and everything. So this is pretty rich here. Now it's given it to me fairly flat. I'm going to try this dynamically. I'm not extremely familiar with the Northwind service, but I'm going to try to do an expansion and show a related table here. So
what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. It's not like we are going to actually have demo fails. That doesn't happen.
No,
here.
no, never.
Not
no,
on MVA.
No.
But I can see that I have a supplier ID, and so I can assume that my products table is related to the suppliers table. Okay? Let me jump back to my root service and say, do I have a suppliers table? Execute. Go open that. Let's have a look-see. And in fact, we have a suppliers table.
A nice, neat little way to go and explore. And again, just part of that standard that you go to the root, it gives you, hey, this is what I look like.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and let me emphasize the fact that really nobody had to do any work here. Whoever made the Northwind database can essentially say by either scaffolding in Web API or by setting up a WCF data service, which we can talk about those in a second, turn this into OData, and they didn't have to go wire up all these verbs or anything. So now I'm going to show you a little trick here. The last request that I did up here was for the products table. I'm going to grab that and drag it back to the composer, and it all turns green. And now all of a sudden it refreshes this request with whatever that request was. So I'm back to where I was. Okay, so here's my request to the products table. Now watch this. I want a URL. I want some query parameters on the end of my URL, some URL parameters. So how do I begin that, web guy?
That's a question mark.
Does that mean you don't know, or that's your answer?
No, that's my answer.
That's your final answer? Okay,
yes. Who's on first?
All right. You can phone a friend via the chat room if you'd like.
Yeah, but I won't find out for another few minutes.
Okay, so the URL here, remember, is a standard URL. So we're going to follow all URL conventions, including if I want to add some parameters, I need to use the URL parameter symbol, which is the question mark. And then in between each of my terms is?
An ampersand.
An ampersand, exactly. Okay, so I've got a question mark. Now I could use whatever verb here, but these are OData terms that I want to use, and OData verbs always have a $sign on them. It's kind of nice because it kind of puts them in a different space. They all begin with $sign. They never conflict with your verbs.
Right.
So I have a $sign, and I'm going to choose to expand. That's one of the OData terms. You can go to odata.org and read about it. But essentially what it does is say, I want to bring down the products information, but I also want to expand the suppliers. I want to bring in the related supplier information. So watch this. Expand equals suppliers. I think it's suppliers. It might be supplier, but we'll see in just a second.
Yep.
Go. It has a problem. Let me try it with just supplier. Okay, and it worked.
Yep.
So it's supplier. That's the name of that entity. Now let's look at it. Holy cow. Look at that.
That's neat.
Now I have my product information, and it has brought in all of my supplier information. Look at this. Let's go crazy now. I've got category as well. So let's add category onto here. The syntax is to use a comma. Category. Go. Now you can see that my package size has gotten pretty large here.
Yep.
And so when you expand, you are bringing in more information. But the nice thing about this is that you can really customize this URL, and you can bring in just exactly what information you want. For instance, if you're just interested in the names of your products and maybe their ID to tie up a combo box or something, just bring down the ID and the name. And you don't have to go create a custom method in your API to do that. You just customize a URL that brings just that down through OData.
I like
it. So I'm excited. I hope you are. Let's go have a look at, oops, wrong. Let's go have a look at inspect the categories now. And it has now brought down the products and brought in all of their category information. And this is the reason why it's so big, is because it's got a binary image right in that feed there. So you know what?
Yeah.
This is making this way too large. Okay, let's fetch our categories, but let's leave out that picture.
Okay.
And instead of fetching them by way of, let's go ahead and shift and actually go look at the categories. So notice that it was called category as related to the products. // Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
No. This is good, right? This is,
Yep.
okay. And then my magnifier is going to goof up on me here. Hold on just a second. And we'll close it. All right, so thank you. I do need to go into the categories. So
There you
thank
go.
you. Categories. It brings back 115K worth of data. You know what? That's just too much. So let me look at one of those and see what fields they offer. Category ID, category name, and description. So let me add a different verb on here. That is the select verb. Nice that that's the same verb that we use in LINQ and C#.
Yep.
Select equals, and we're going to do category ID, category name, and anybody remember description? I just remembered that. Truth of the matter. Bring that in. Now look at the difference in size now.
Because now you got back just what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
And that really is, I mean, when you're talking about performance, it's ask for only what you need, and that's it.
Yep. You can get really granular on this, and you can be pulling back just specifically what information you need. As you can tell, if you've got SQL experience, you know that with SQL you can pull back these gigantic tables, but you usually don't. You usually trim them down, pull back just the rows and just the columns that you need.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing here. Okay, so there are a lot of verbs that you should learn. I've shown you the expand and the select. You can use the filter verb to say that I'm only interested in categories where the category name, and I have to use hopefully I can do this from memory, starts with, category name starts with, and I'm interested in S. Go. Yep, and that looks like it's brought down some stuff. Only seafood.
Nice.
That's the only one, seafood. So a whole bunch of stuff that you can do by way of this method, by way of this this protocol, the OData standard. And now I've shown you a little bit about how to do it raw. Sometimes in my applications, I actually do fetch it raw. I do implement with it raw because it's just not always worth it to bring in a library just to give me a nice syntax to let it write this stuff for me. I may as well just do it.
Yep.
Other times, I want to bring in a library. That's what we're going to talk about is some different ways to access our
absolutely.
data.
Absolutely. So do you want to or do you want me to?
What is that?
Next demo.
To talk about, is it the producing OData?
Yes.
No, I think that you should do it.
I will do that.
I actually mentioned this a little bit though, and I should clarify. I said that you can use Web API or WCF data services. Let me just enumerate the ways that you can write OData.
Okay.
Because you can produce this yourself. You can turn your data into OData. You can do it manually.
That does not sound like any kind of fun.
No.
Okay.
No, you really would have. You'd be responsible for implementing that entire standard.
Yeah. No, thank you.
No thanks. WCF.
No.
It can be done.
Well,
It
yeah,
sure can.
but again, going back to manually.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to use WCF for it, you should use WCF data services because it makes it a snap. And I actually really like WCF. I see you make the stink face, but I really like WCF data services. But it's not always right, and that's why I've called it maybe. And what would you call the yes?
I would call the yes the the WCF, the Web API OData implementation. And it is just this easy that if we come back over here to my copy of Visual Studio, I've got, again, just the exact same starting package that I had before, just simply called OData server this time. And I'm going to say API controllers again. And let me get rid of that little dot. And now what I'm going to do is I'm again going to right-click controller. By the way, one little thing, because this gets me every time, you're going to notice that I've got controller and then I've got Web API controller class. One of those will bring up that neat little dialog that will say, hey, I can scaffold this for you. The other one will say, hey, why don't you go build this on your own? I'm going to use the scaffolding. And in order to use the scaffolding, you have to make sure that you hit the one at the top. So again, right-click,
item.
add, and then controller.
Add controller, okay.
Yeah,
great.
add controller. And now you're going to notice that I've got my little OData controller, and then hit add. Now, again, it's going to ask me, okay, well, what do I want to call this? I want to call this trails. It's going to ask me for the model class. That is trail. The context, that is my demo context. And I'm going to click add. And once again, I'm going to take a sip of water. I just love being able to do that. Hey, you know what? You just go do a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
See?
You do it for me.
Yeah. This is asynchrony. That's what we were demoing.
Because you can drink water while it is working.
Exactly. See? You know? Now, what you're going to notice is that once this is done, it gives you a README text, and let's read it. The web API configuration must be updated for each OData controller created by scaffolding. Instructions are available in the generated controller. Okay, well, let's go look at the generated controller. And the generated controller says to add a route for this controller, merge these statements into the register method of the web API config class. Know that OData URLs are case sensitive. Okay, cool. Well, let me just go ahead and cut that code right on out of there. And let me get rid of the comment as well. And then let me open up under app start my web API config. And then let me just kick right about there and a little bit of tweaking here. There we go. And Control K, Control D to format everything. Love that. And so now what you're going to notice is I just simply pulled in the couple of using statements. And then right here in the ooey gooey center is my little call to actually do the registration. That right there, that little convention model builder will take care of all those OData conventions that Jeremy was talking about a couple of minutes ago. This is what's going to expose out that Trails entity set for me. This right here on that last parameter there, what's happening? That's the name. This right here, that is the URL. That's the URL that's going to be made available. So in this case, it's going to be /OData / and then eventually Trails to go get to our Trails. And then again, the builder just points back to the builder that we built up just a second ago. So if I go in and fire this up, chugga, you're going to notice that I can now say OData Trails, hit enter. And you're going to notice, sure enough, I get JSON. And let me open that up in Notepad. And there is everything right there. And then I could also go in and start doing all my little queries and so forth if I was so inclined. But one of the biggest questions that has been asked in the chat window is there a way of simplifying this? This is why we have Visual Studio. So what I'm going to do is one more time here, right-click, add, new project, and OData client, hit enter, and let me just right-click and say add service reference. And that is not the one that I want. Where is the one that I want? I don't have it up anymore. You know what? I'm just going to do it this way. Give me 2 seconds. Let me just launch it again. Copy. There we go. And now back over here, right-click, add service reference, paste, OData, go. And then it's automatically going to pick up my little container. And then if I scroll on down, it will automatically pick up my Trails. Cool. Well, let me go ahead and just give this a real quick name of our running context, like that. And let's hit OK. And now, down below, let's go ahead and say var context equals new container. Now, the container was the name that it generated when I made the reference. That's now going to be our context, and what it needs is just simply where to point. So I'm going to say new URI, and we're going to point to OData, just like that. Then it's going to say, all right, well, how would you like to query the data? So you're going to notice context, Trails. Well, gosh, that looks just like our little DB context that we had from before. And you'll notice that we could actually use this. So I could actually go in and say trail equals new trail. I could say trail, or maybe I can't, name equals, and let's say, why am I failing? Come up with a running trail, Christopher.
We have Rattlesnake Ridge here in town.
Do you really?
Yep.
Okay. There you go. Rattlesnake Ridge. And then I could go ahead and say context, add to trails, that trail. And then I could go ahead and say context, save changes. Cool. And then Down below, I could go in and retrieve that. I could go in and just simply say var result equals context. Let's go in and say trails. Let's say where. And let's say T name starts with, and let's say the letter R. So that way we'll get back the one that we want. And then we'll do a result to list for each console, write line, and T name. Cool. And so now this will print out that new trail that we will have just created. So let me go ahead and launch this. And sure enough, you're going to notice that there is our Rattlesnake Ridge. Or if I added another one, and I'm just not feeling creative, so this is just going to be running trail. That's going to be our brand new one here. And I rerun this. Now you're going to notice that I get that second one back. So the takeaway that I want you to get out of this little demo is that with OData, and I could have just as easily pointed at Northwind, but we wanted to see how to go in and create it. Just like that, without me having to write really any code whatsoever, I now have an OData service that is exposed and is connectable from Visual Studio. And Visual Studio was the one that generated that little trail class for me. So you were looking for easier ways to start making these calls without necessarily having to write out all the JSON queries yourself. There's a very easy way to do that. Just connect up to the OData service.
Awesome.
Excellent. All right.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was trying to wire up a pretty fancy little demo here for consuming it by way of JSON. I don't think I've quite got it finished, so I'm not even going to attempt that, but I will show you kind of a flat demo of doing it. So this will still show pretty well here.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and switch over to me here. So what I was trying to get done is I was trying to create a list view. This is a modern concept in Windows 8, and then a template for this is how I want these individual items to show up, and I was going to make it show up in tiles, but it just didn't have quite enough time in between while you were talking. So what I still have is my paragraph called P1. This is just like we had before. And what I still have on my code behind here, let me go ahead and comment this out using Christopher's Control-K, Control-C shortcut, which I use all the time. And now what I'm going to do is I'm still going to do my request, but I've replaced it so that it's now a request to the Northwind database, to the products entity, and I'm expanding the suppliers.
Nice.
And now it should be a relatively large message because I'm not selecting. It's going to be pulling out the full of all of those objects. And when I get that back, notice this looks identical to the way it did before. I'm going to parse the result.response. The only difference is that with OData, the response comes back inside, wrapped inside of a thing called value.
Okay.
So now I dot into value, and that's the thing that I parse it, and then I dot into value, and that actually is what stores the array of results.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and F9 right here and run it. Hopefully it doesn't throw any error. It did, probably from what I was trying to mess around. This will be easy for us to troubleshoot on the fly. Yep, demos. Doesn't like demos. So let's go here and... So let's go to my UI. I actually have this list view, and it's looking for a namespace that I don't actually have. So I'm going to hit abort on this attempt and run that. There we go. So it's broken at this point now where it's gone to the service, and then it's come back. So keep in mind, the service request has executed. It has come back from the service. And it's broken into the callback method inside my then description.
Okay, nice. Okay?
So if, as a matter of fact, just to make that absolutely clear and drive home the point of the asynchrony, I'm going to do a breakpoint here where it's actually requesting out, and then see about how long it takes to come back. And it's going to happen so quick that it'll be hard to see, but let's just go ahead and try it. Everybody look quickly. So here's the XHR call. And after I execute this, it'll take a second before it actually completes. Ready? Go. It was a microsecond. It was very, very little time. But there was actually a time there where it actually went out to the server and came back. Now, when it came back with this result object. If you don't know this, you should. If you hold down Shift and hit F9, it opens the Quick Watch in Visual Studio.
Shift
Super
F9.
duper handy. Shift F9.
Shift F9.
That brings in the Quick Watch, and the Quick Watch is a place where you can kind of do some on-the-fly evaluation. Now, you're probably familiar with the fact that it's difficult to do evaluation of Lambda statements and stuff like that in Visual Studio with C#. Yeah. It's just too difficult. That's too difficult of a problem to solve, at least at this point. In JavaScript, no problem. So in JavaScript, we can kind of dot into any of our Lambdas, look at those in the evaluation. So super nice. You get a little bit of a bonus there with JavaScript. So let's drill into that result. There's my response. I could even, when I'm evaluating it, just type it right in here and say JSON parse. Look at the result. Now it's an object, and it lets me expand it, and there's that value property I was telling you. The reason why it's hidden in value is because when you get a result back from OData, you're getting some OData metadata as well as the actual content. So inside there, look at that, huge array. I bet those are products. In fact, they are. I bet each has a supplier. In fact, it does. So this is what I'm dealing with here.
Nice. Yep.
So I jump out, kill that, Control-Shift F9 to delete all breakpoints. Thank you very much. I love shortcuts. I've got now a list of products. I can for each that list of products, and for each product, so keep in mind here, this is where I use a descriptive variable name, and this is where I use a single value. Yeah. So for each of those, I'm going to find my paragraph 1, get its inner HTML, and append my product name, a space, a parenthesis, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to dot into the supplier and get his company name.
Okay.
Kind of cool that I can actually do that. Run that, and there we go.
Nice.
So now I'm getting the list of products and the supplier. You can see that I'm getting data, and I'm getting related data. I'm pulling that all out of an OData service, and I'm bringing it right into my app. Now, again, if I had enough time, you would have been able to see that I'm going to be able to pull these and use them to feed a modern list view. And now instead of just seeing a list of text, you would see some nicely colored tiles and something that's interactive and highly optimized for touch and all of that.
Yep, absolutely.
So consuming OData is a good thing.
Yes.
Do it. Do it today.
Yes, building OData is a good thing, and really not that hard at all. Not that hard at all. All right. Well, I think we've done a pretty good lap around REST queries and OData. I think it's time to close everything off, taking a look at libraries and SignalR and other really neat stuff.
Yeah.
So,
cool. I would say go ahead and prepare. If you have any questions, ask those in the chat room in our next session. We'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A, and we'd be glad to respond to whatever. We're going to be talking about additional libraries that you can use in your applications. And if you guys have good tips and tricks you want to share with the rest of the viewers and us about C# libraries or JavaScript libraries that you can bring into an application to make your life grand, to increase your developer joy, then please share those with us.
Excellent. All right, we'll see you guys back here in 10 minutes.
See you in 10.